Edith and Melanie, welcome to I'll Call My Guy. Although every time I have women on, they always sort of look at me and I'm like, guy is like I call my gals. It's guy is a gender neutral term. I call my person. So thank you for coming. You came up from Stanford. So you guys are both in the nonprofit space. Is that right?
We are.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with you, Edith. What is your title? Where do you work? What do you do?
Thanks, Rich. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So, Melanie and I work for an organization called Stamford Cradle to Career. It's a collective impact organization that really champions data and collaboration of organizations that serve families to serve systemic level problems. I'm proud enough to be the president of that
Awesome.
organization. I've been doing that for about 3 years now.
Okay.
Prior to that, I did a little consulting in the nonprofit world during COVID,
Right.
really introducing me to this creative, hopeful side of
Right.
education. And my longest formalized experience prior to nonprofit has been working as a school administrator in public schools as a school principal, assistant principal, and spending some time as a special education administrator.
Wow. Okay. So you had a kind of quite an interesting journey. Let me ask you. Let me start kind of a little bit about you, and then we'll get into. I want to talk to Melanie, and then I want to talk about the organization, who funds it, what you do, how it impacts people on a day to day. Are you a Connecticut girl?
I am. I
Okay.
am.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in
Oh,
Stamford.
you're Stanford.
I
Okay.
am. So that's part of the reason I'm really passionate about the work that I do.
Okay.
I believe that these strategies are good leverage points for anywhere.
Okay.
However, being a graduate of Stanford Public Schools,
Okay.
a longtime employee of the school district, and
Okay.
now having two students, a junior and a senior, within the school district, really lets me hone in to a different grain size around strategies and the potential that our great system has, and some of the flaws that hold back
Right.
some folks in order to reach the great outcomes that we know are able to be achieved by all students.
Were you growing up? Was your family a family that had these types of needs, or were you a more fortunate family? What was your background in that regard?
That's a great question, Rich. I had the great privilege of being raised by a Methodist pastor
Ah.
and a social worker. So we very early on were exposed to our responsibility
Right.
to make things better. So being in the community that way, having friends of all walks of life, really allowed me to know both the need and the abundance that a community like Stanford
Hmm.
has, and the opportunity to reconcile that for more outcomes for families.
Okay. And siblings?
I do have two
Two
siblings.
siblings.
I'm one of three girls.
Okay.
I have a younger sister who is a special education teacher in Raleigh,
Right.
and I have an older sister who's a college professor and author. So we all
So this
are.
this is like it almost like it makes perfect sense, right? The minister and the people you serving the communities.
That's it.
That's very interesting. All right, and you obviously live down there now, and you have two kids.
I do have two children.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you see any of this public service and helping others in their spirit at all?
I do. I do. Many times they help with community events that we put on at Stanford Cradle to Career, sometimes willingly, sometimes as a chore that mom is asking for. But I think that I'm proud to know that they understand their individual responsibility to
Yeah.
make things better.
Cool. Melanie, what about you? What's your title? What's your role? And then we'll talk a little bit about your background.
Yes, I'm from Venezuela.
Okay. Mucho gusto.
Thank you. Gracias. So I came to the US about 25 years ago.
Okay.
And I have two children.
Okay.
One in high school and the other one in elementary school.
Okay.
So everything on this work is started for my children's. I went to law school, but then my one of my children's has an IEP,
Okay.
and because of special education needs, that's how I start myself educating more about education and
Okay.
special education. And as an immigrant, was very difficult to know how the different of the systems that we have in the US compared with other countries.
Mhm.
So I have to find a way to learn how to navigate, how to get the services that I needed. for my family and my son, and that's how everything started.
I see. So what is your title exactly? Like you're at the organization.
I'm the community engagement liaison.
Community engagement liaison. Okay, and that and for which organization specifically?
Stamford Cradle to Career.
Okay, and so you are. Is there what portion of your of the folks that you serve are Hispanic that require maybe a translator or a friendly face that can speak Spanish?
Well, Stanford, we have over 52% of the population of Stanford Public Schools are Spanish-speaking families.
Wow.
We do have families from Asian Creole, speak Ukraine, and many other languages.
Wow.
But Spanish is one.
52%.
I think it's a little bit more, right?
Yes, right.
Wow.
Last time I checked,
What a
it was
diverse
about,
community. I didn't know that about Stamford.
yes.
Wow.
So we are a very diverse community, but one of the most biggest needs is in Spanish.
And
language.
do you guys sit in the same office?
Yes.
Okay, and that's in downtown Stamford?
It's downtown Stamford.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how long have you been with the organization?
Well, with United Way, it's going to be 4 years. I started as a parent ambassador. Again, like working around the needs that parents in the community had, and then I now the community engagement liaison.
So is United Way the parent organization? How is that? Do you know
It's
how
the
it's structured?
backbone.
The backbone
Yes.
of it. So is that how it works?
Yes, so the organization has been around for about 10 years.
Okay.
It started as an initiative
Right.
of the United Way.
I see.
And since then has established its own board of directors. We have
Right.
our own budget. And at this point, we share a great partnership with the United Way as our fiscal backbone.
I see. Your fiscal
And-
backer, right? Because
yes.
you're a nonprofit, so you don't have an owner, so you're
Correct.
just the board. And so, but the funding is like what percentage of funding is from the United Way? Do you think?
So we receive a small grant from the United
Okay.
Way, but the majority of our funding comes through grants.
Through the federal government and state?
So right now we are blessed enough to have a federal grant.
Ooh, I hope it stays.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
It's been really, really, really influential in our community. It's called a Full Service Community Schools Grant. It is $2.3 million over 5 years.
Okay.
We're in the year 2.5 of that.
And that money's
allotment.
already committed to you, I hope?
Year for year. So
Oh,
this year we're in
gosh.
good shape and we keep holding still to see if it'll be approved. So we are scheduled going forward. But Rich, as you can imagine, it's a huge deal.
Huge.
Yes,
And through what agency does that money come?
through the Department of Education.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. So
Oh,
we
gosh.
were lucky enough that our program officer was not one of the 50% of people to be laid off and reassigned. So we're in a good place there relationship wise, and just getting our reporting in because the impact that it's having on students is phenomenal. We measure really clear outcomes. We had the opportunity to share this data just at a meeting we had this past week. One of the schools that we work with is Dolan Middle School. One of the indicators were around best fit, or is this school a good fit for my child? When parents were asked that indicator in 2021-22, only 50% of families rated favorably. In measuring that outcome in 2 years later, once the grant was in place for a year, that skyrocketed to over 70%.
Whether the school's a good fit?
Yes.
And what do people, from your data, presumably you're talking to people, polling them, getting surveys, what makes a school a good fit generally?
Yeah. I'll talk about that from the lens of being a parent and a former administrator. I think it speaks to a sense of belonging. When somebody shows up, is this my place? Is there a plan for me? Are people being mindful about what I need and how to get out of a situation, the potential, so that I can continue to grow? And the way that we're doing that in the Full Service Community Schools Grant is really deliberate around robust after-school enrichment. These are middle school children. A lot of times the assumption is because they don't need childcare or supervision that, not enough programming is in place. But we know developmentally it's so important for those children age 11 to 14 to be in wholesome, engaging, exposing activities. So we've been able to offer over 90% of the school population an opportunity to participate in after-school programs at no cost, which is huge.
And do you develop that curriculum?
So we work alongside partners. That's the beauty of collective impact.
right.
We really, really seek out the experts in the field and then provide the coordination. Of course, we could create a program, but if there's already someone who is doing resin art, which is a huge hit at the middle school level, I can spend some time on YouTube maybe thinking about it, but why not contract the expert who has the passion to do this,
Sure.
to share that with students? And that's what we've been able to do in the realm of enrichment and exposure. We've been able to do that with increasing more mentoring and positive adult relationship opportunities through partner organizations like SPEF, like 101 Black Men, lots of other partnerships in which we can bring more services to students so they feel good about it, and in relationship, their families feel like school is a better fit because all of these things are happening, in addition to all of the hard work that schools have to do with reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Interesting. And back to you for a sec. When you grew up in Venezuela?
I grew up in Venezuela.
And you said you've been here about 25 years?
Yes.
Okay. When you came here, how old were you?
I was 18 years old.
Did you speak any English?
I did not.
Wow.
I did not speak English, but I was fortunate. I went to St. Joseph University in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I went to the college to learn how to speak English.
But I mean, but you came here, and again, this gets into the fitting in thing, right? I can't imagine if I went to Venezuela, and I can say mucho gusto, a couple words, and I can, now obviously the technology is good on the phone. I can type it in and hold it up, and now they actually have a thing you can wear now, glasses, and it listens and it translates. But I mean, but assuming you didn't have any of that 25 years ago.
No. And I remember when I came, it wasn't the technology wasn't like we have right now. We used to have
a dictionary.
Right, and it used to be like a calculator that you used to type the word, and
then you'd hold it up to the person.
and you're like, okay, you gotta tell me.
It's awkward, but you'd get through.
And the dictionaries, it was difficult. It wasn't that easy, but
you did it. So
I did.
So that was and your family. So you came here, and you have siblings?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they come with you?
Did not.
Did not.
I came by myself.
Wow.
It's a very long story, but my mom was a prosecutor in my country back then. I was very young, but I also used to work for the army in my country.
Okay.
My mom had a really dangerous case in my country, and they sent me because they were gonna kill me.
Oh, right. It was like a mob prosecution of some kind of gang prosecution.
Yes.
So they sent you away to protect you.
Correct.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't my choice.
Right.
So I came here because I didn't have a choice. And back few months after I came, my brother got killed.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. But I stayed here, and then I never come back.
Okay.
I went years after, but it wasn't really my choice. It was
But it wasn't your choice, but which makes it even more difficult because you didn't want to necessarily come.
Right.
Your hand was forced to come.
Right.
Didn't speak any English.
No.
Wow. So I mean, again, I always find when I talk to people, no matter where it is, we seem to always land in a place that's tied to our origin story.
Yeah.
Her with the service, with obviously parents that care deeply about helping people, right? A pastor and a social worker, and you almost for your own, wanting to fit in and assimilate and come here and be part of, society in America when you weren't even supposed to be here.
Right. That's why I keep doing on a daily basis what I do, because I had my own experience, and I know how difficult it could be for an immigrant, especially who doesn't speak the language, who doesn't know how the system works. And especially when you have children that have needs.
Yes.
In general, there is so many gaps that families are having on a daily basis.
Right.
That sometimes if you have someone who guide you and say, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is how can you get this help and this, that's not that, it will make a big difference. So that's what I'm
Wow, what
here.
a nice
That's
story.
why I do what I
And
do.
how many other employees are with you in the home office?
Yes, so we're a small but mighty team of
Right.
10.
10.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes, so we are able to work in very deliberate buckets. We have 4 major categories of work outside of the full service community schools that I just spoke of, and that's our work in early childhood.
Mhm.
We work very closely with the school district, child care providers in town in order to put forth strategies for parents and for students so that we have kindergartners that are most ready once they enter the school system.
I see.
Our second bucket of work is what we call early grade reading, with the overall goal that all of our students are on grade level by 3rd grade. Research shows, brain development shows that if students aren't fully readers by that time, it's likely that they'll never be. And remediation is so much more costly and time extensive than just getting it right early. So we prioritize early intervention so that kids hit those outcomes. Our third bucket is what we call transition to college and career readiness. We work really closely again with the school district, guidance counselors, and community agencies to support children with FAFSA and enrollment data in order to pursue college credits, in addition to workforce pipelines. And then the fourth bucket of work that we're recently emerging on and finding really important is civic engagement. Really understanding that people want to navigate the system. No one shows up to schools loving their kids less, but the difference is the information that they know and the tools that they can execute. So we want to be very clear about producing more visibility and legibility to the systems in which improve family outcomes in Stamford.
All right. So, how many public schools do you work with in Stamford?
So Stanford has 21 public schools. So we support the system throughout with collaboration with the superintendent, her cabinet, and many decision makers there. In addition to individual relationships, a lot of Melanie's work, hard work, has been establishing relationships with individual schools and parent facilitators and able to give resources to families, leveraging relationships that they already have. I could do a commercial. We do a lot of social media networking, but if you get a message by your trusted person, how much more likely is someone
Sure.
to act on that than just hearing information randomly?
But would it be fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the individual parents, are they dealing with you directly, or are you just sort of in the background helping supporting the schools?
Both.
Both. Okay.
So sometimes we do direct service workshops
Okay.
in different scale sizes. This week alone, we had an individual workshop at a school. That same day, we had a partner convening with 100 folks representing 40 different organizations.
Wow.
So depending on the message, the consistent message, it's important that we deliver it in different grain sizes in order that people know where to get the information from going forward, both at a partner level, people who are working with other families, and in a direct relationship with families and students.
Wow. And it's only limited to Stanford, is that right?
Yes. However, this is a collective impact model. There happens to be 5 others in the state of Connecticut. We're governed through Strive Together, which is the national model. It's a accountability partner, quite frankly. We have outcomes that we have to measure.
Oh, I see.
As far as systems level change. So it's not about what Edith and Melanie want to do or what we think is fun or beneficial or impactful. Each year we have to submit a civic infrastructure report that measures the amount of students we have entering kindergarten with pre-K experience, the amount of 3rd graders who are reading on grade level, our graduation rates as a district. We have to measure disciplinary rates as it relates to social and economic demographics. We measure teacher enrollment and demographic rates as it relates to students, because his data supports that students do better when they have people that they can identify with. And that's not just minority students or Spanish students or Black students. The general public thrives better with diversity. And then the last thing that we measure is attendance rates to make sure that the system as a whole is thriving. And we're held to that. So our partnerships are individualized, but then we measure that to make sure that it's landing on the whole system for incremental growth over time.
So why someone might ask, why can't the schools do this? Like, why do they need you?
Yes.
I know why, but I want to know what your thoughts on why. Like, why can't, a school is one of the most important government functions in my view, right? We're educating the next generation.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the school sort of bake in Edith's and Melanie's throughout their system and not have to rely on a not-for-profit to help them do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah. So I think that I'll answer that from both lenses
Yeah.
as a former principal
Sure.
and now what I do. I think that schools sometimes lack capacity. A principal that we work very closely with said 2 days ago that his staff is 99% rock stars, and it's just not enough because it takes more resources, it takes more attention in order to do this deliberately. What our goal is to initiate and then have that sustained by the system over time, and we have some real examples of how that's happened. And that's what we hope with this full service community schools grant as well, to produce a proof point, and then the system can then sustain it over time. You're right. My job is to put myself out of a job. If I'm really effective at these strategies, then the system absorbs this change using data and relationships and all that we're doing in a way that sustains it over time. So that's what we're working for.
I see. Okay, so the short answer is it's not, the schools just don't have. You just need more. It's you need a bigger village.
You need a bigger village,
right? Because
and you'd asked the question before about funding, and I got caught up on the full service community schools grant because it's so exciting. But we also get grant funding from philanthropic organizations. Family endowments, some small level municipal and state grants. And then what we're looking to do, particularly now in this climate, is establish more corporate partnerships.
Right.
And what that means, particularly in a place like Stamford.
Right. So, and I'm sure you have somebody in your organization. I know you have a million hats you wear, but that just deals with that, right? That goes out and tries to find those other sources of funding. Families with dynastic wealth that can, like the Melanie and Gates Foundation, those types of organizations that they can throw $100,000, which can make a complete difference for you, but is chump change to them, and they hand out money to different organizations, but everyone's trying to get the money.
Yes.
Right. So you have to compete with a lot of other organizations just like yours that are trying to do that, right?
Well, what we try to do is not work on that scarcity mindset around the competition. In collaboration, we want our partners who are doing good work to also be funded. Many of the grants that we go after are in a collaborative nature just for that premise that we're better together. So really looking to see how we leverage the good work and expertise that's happening already in a way to braid funding, commingle resources, have things that are offered in kind, really with the outcome that families level up in a way of bundled resources versus individual isolated interventions.
Interesting. How, Melanie, what do you see in the work that you do as the biggest challenge you're facing now?
Access to resources.
Right.
Access to resources.
And again, in this, we want to, obviously in this political climate, obviously, and I have other friends that are in this world too, everybody is scared, right? Because the communities rely so heavily on this, and it's such important, good work that is making such important change in people's lives, positive change, right? Helping people if America is anything, it's to help the folks that need it the most, right? It's not for everyone to make lots of money, right, and live in big houses and have fancy cars. It's to, give everybody a shot to live a healthy, decent life, free from violence, but we can be educated, and then we can compete on a global scale against, and be America, right? Be the best. And so, do you see that? Are you hearing that from some of your partners as well? Do they feel that pressure?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we work on a daily basis. Like Edith was saying, we had an immigration workshop this past week.
Yes.
Trying to, in a partnership with a nonprofit called Building One Community in Stamford, who their source is about immigration.
Right.
And, trying to inform the community what are the rights that they should know, and how, they confronting immigration, or they're in a situation where they feel they're not safe. And that's our focus, like trying to bring information and resources that the community need. And how we get this is like getting the feedback from the parents and many meetings. What do you need? What are you looking for? What are the information that you think is important for you and your family or your school? And that's how we plan our work. And we
So is it fair to say that you're day by day now? You're just
pretty much
fingers crossed, deep
Yes.
breaths, and just we're working with what we have,
Yeah,
and hopefully
'cause
it'll be fine.
everything change.
Everything changes.
Today
yeah.
we could be dealing about immigration.
Right.
Tomorrow we're gonna be dealing about access to food because the food is so expensive
Food stamps
now.
are cut or something.
Right, and we're talking about different issues that we face it every day, every month.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I would add to Melanie's very valid point about accessing resources as being the number one concern. And I think secondary to, Rich, is us having to adapt our messaging.
Mm-hmm.
We're really, really proud of being an organization that provides accessible content to folks.
Mm-hmm.
All of our information is translated. All of our workshops have multilingual interpretation available. In prior years, we would post Spanish-only workshop for dreamers as it relates to college readiness. We have to be very, very particular about how we do that now in order to get folks' attention in a way that feels not threatening, in a way that feels inclusive.
Yeah.
Thank you. And still in relationship. So that's caused us to be more boots on the ground. Melanie and her team has been great around canvassing neighborhoods, going into trusted businesses like laundromats and bodegas and places in which we can give information to people already in relationship with the folks that we want to reach. So that if you get a flyer from your laundromat that you go to on every Tuesday around resources for pre-K, you're more, to our earlier point, apt to look at that and take notice versus something that looks general and not as specific or targeted towards you. So really changing the way that we engage people in order to get the information to the most deserving.
Edith, if I were a genie and could grant one wish to fix a societal problem that would have the most impact on the work that you do, what would that be?
Oh, that's a big question.
That's a big question.
Yes. I think it would be to create a pipeline for families to be economically mobile.
Tell me what that means.
Yes, I think that it means that you are able to be self-sustaining in a way that you can navigate education systems, healthcare systems, housing to a way that doesn't require this level of intervention. If you're economically mobile and you have a pipeline and resource access, then you don't need someone to fix it for you because the system is inherently for you.
But is that just a sort of a way to say that the rent's too damn high and people don't have enough money?
That's one of the
let's cut to the chase.
Food,
right.
And
I remember that there was a pastor. He said the rent's too damn high.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Stamford. The rent, right. It's very difficult.
High.
And if you're not making, fortunately for Connecticut, we have a very high minimum wage, $15.69. I don't think there's only maybe one other state that has it that high, right? So there's that, but that's still not enough for Stamford.
No.
You can't live on that.
No. So it's about that,
right.
The individual issue of
right.
getting people more money,
right.
but also how do you sustain that, right? Mm-hmm. Giving somebody a one-time grant is helpful, right? We saw that during COVID.
They need to make it all the time.
They need to make it all the time. And they have to have pipelines for their kids to also be in that system.
So I'm going to push you a little bit more.
Sustained.
So if I say to you, okay, I'm the genie, and I'm like, well, how am I going to grant this wish? I want to make a more pipeline, and it's not, and I can't just give people more money. I have to allow them to be able to make that. Is that by way of giving people more skills so they can get better jobs?
Yeah.
Right? Is that really what it comes down to?
It's education.
Education.
Absolutely. Education and access.
Right. Right. And that will in turn make them more employable, right? Keep them from, it's this sort of age old thing. And I'm sure your mom talked to you about this as a social worker, and you saw it as the prosecutor. Like, it's the age old thing. Like, are we going to give people the opportunities? Because when people don't have opportunities, sometimes they turn to bad things. They turn to crime. They make stupid choices. They make a one-off choice that, gets them jammed up in the legal system, and that forever tarnishes or impairs their ability to be employable at that higher level. But if they feel inclusive, they feel like they belong, they're less likely to sort of veer off that path. And I know this too. I was raised by I met my dad when I was very late in life, single mother. I was a product of Section 8 and food stamps. I get it. I did that. I was the first in my family to go to college. And I know, like, all the sort of when you're below the poverty line or at the poverty line, it's very easy to sort of fall off that tightrope that you're walking.
Yep.
You with some kids, you make a stupid choice, right? Just even as a teenager, when your brain's not developed, and suddenly now you're in the juvenile system, right? And maybe it's a one-off, but then you get pulled into it. You may have some mental health issues that you can't get access to because you don't have good insurance. Your parent is out working. Yeah. Maybe they have unresolved mental trauma from a childhood issue. There's so many things looking to get you.
Yeah.
And so you're just trying to balance on this wire, and at some point you fall and you sustain an irreparable injury.
Yeah.
And forever it stays with you, and then the interventions that's why the interventions sometimes you need to intervene before you fall off that wire, that tightrope that you're walking, because once you fall off and you break your hip, you're never the same.
Yeah. Rich, I really appreciate that analogy because it really is at the crux of what we do. It's the individual intervention for the student, for the family, for that person. But there's also an overarching strategy to challenge, push, and change the system. So there's more of a runway for people so that tightrope isn't so narrow.
Right.
What can we do as far as policy change, as far as systemic change in order to give more opportunity for
you
people?
want it to be a plank, right? So
That's
you can have a better footing instead of one foot after the other. There's wind and you have this pole and that's the metaphor that I saw sort of looking back now as I'm almost 50, but seeing like I got, luckily for me, like I navigated because, I tested well. So my mom got me into these private schools that gave me scholarships, and I had very, little boys without dads don't have good outcomes usually. Right. And or there's a lot of bad things that can happen. And I was able to get folks to really, and I was among kids that had wealth and parents with stature, and that I sort of was able to see that and see, okay, there's hope here. And I was nurtured in a way, but for the grace of God go I just happened to do okay that way. But I just saw along the way, as I think back, as somebody that didn't have access to a lot of resources, that there's so many things that can knock you off that wire. And I know kids from the neighborhood that got knocked off that wire, and they're never the same. It's very hard, and it's really nice to hear how you guys are just. The metaphor I would use for as I'm learning about your organization is the Melanies and the Ediths and all of your partners within the school. You're teaching them to sort of follow the people along the wire and hold your hands up. And as they're getting blown, you're pushing them back and then teaching them the strategies to get better balance.
Yeah,
that's a good metaphor. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking in my head.
And strengthening the system to support them.
Correct.
Right.
Well. Strengthening the wire, widening the wire, having more people along the side to say, "Hey, you've got this." Steady yourself because you got to get them to a certain point, and then hopefully they can then be somebody that hops off and then goes to the front and helps the other people coming along to sort of do that. I mean, but that's the model of I think the difference between sort of a pull you up by your bootstraps kind of thing and a sort of a liberal social model of how we want the world to operate, how we want the world to exist, how we want society to look like. And to me, I want society to look like the government assisting these organizations to help these things, because there's sort of a blind spot with a lot of folks that are just like, the government shouldn't do this or cut taxes. Like, what kind of society do we want to live in? Do we want people to be suffering all the time? I mean, I've traveled to India. There's 1.5 billion people. They have naked poor running around. They can't take care of all these people. and I thought that the part of the American sort of dream was, and something we held ourselves out as, is we were not that. We have a safety net, and we're not going to let people fall below it.
Right.
And I think that one of the primary responsibilities of government should be to get that social safety net even higher. Like, even if we're here, it shouldn't just be like we're the last result before you crack your head on the skull and die. You should be, we should catch people, 10 feet up.
Right.
As opposed to a foot away from the ground.
Right.
And so this is such an important model in my view, to help sustain folks, in particular in a town that has a lot of resources. I mean, you're right. I think Edith made the point, like Stamford, I mean, there's multi-million-dollar homes in certain neighborhoods, right? I mean, there's dynastic wealth, there's New York City wealth, there's hedge fund wealth in Stamford, and then there's obviously folks that are, barely getting by. And again, I'm preaching too much, but we know that, poverty can really force some bad outcomes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rich, it's
that's
interesting.
Why information is power.
That's right.
I was just going to say
Right,
that,
right.
Melanie.
Yes.
Same frame.
Information
Yes.
is power, because even if you don't have the knowledge and you have a need, but you don't know what to do, you're going to keep suffering.
Oh, that's right.
But if you do not have the resource, but you have the knowledge and you know the way to go in order for you to help yourself and look for the people who can help you, you will get out of the hole.
Right.
Otherwise,
But you need the village. You
need the village.
You do.
And
Exactly.
I'll double down on the information. It's the information for the individual, but it's also the data for us to inform our work, and the data for us to inform other folks who provide resources for families. You're right. Stamford, in some cases, has abundant wealth, which affects our mill rate, which affects our school funding from the state, which is a trickle-down approach. But we also have about 60% of our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch in our public school. So that disparity is one that we have to reconcile, and the one that we need to use data to determine what resources those kids need in order to be in a different, more sustainable situation.
Right. What would you say? And I had the same question I asked her. If I were a genie, and I'd say to you, as it relates to the work that you do, if I could grant one wish that would best benefit the community that you help, would you have a different answer than Edith?
I will have the same answer.
Same answer, right?
Same answer. Because that's what we need right now.
Right.
And it's now.
Right. And certainly the price of things hasn't gone
so
down.
Crazy.
It's high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of needs. It's like a lot of people have really good jobs and they get a decent salary, but it's not enough.
And how do you, I'll start with you, Melanie, on this. How do you ensure that the work you're doing is inclusive and equitable in terms of, these are historically marginalized communities? How do you ensure that you sort of keep those two goals in place?
Well, by being inclusive.
By being inclusive. That's an interesting answer, right? How do you
Yeah.
be inclusive? By being inclusive,
Right.
right? That's a fair answer.
it's-
Simple as that.
Yeah. If you don't have that as a fair choice, when you start to do anything, then you're not doing it right.
Just to be inclusive, right?
Yeah.
How would you answer that?
Her exact same answer. Just having the fundamental belief of belonging and inclusivity. Sometimes in organizations that serve families, they build something and then they accommodate for inclusivity after that.
Yeah.
What do I do to make this fit, this thing that I
Right,
already have?
because all the people look like me.
That's right.
Right.
How do I make what I have more digestible?
And that's a laudable goal too, right? And maybe you didn't start there, but at least you want to get there, right? But you're saying something different. You're like, no, from day one,
You gotta be inclusive.
you don't have the inclusivity program is just to be inclusive.
That's right. So
Interesting.
our staff is comprised of awesome people like Melanie who come with lived experience, and they're able to contribute that at the decision-making table when we come up with strategies for families. We leverage lived experience. We leverage data from surveys in our community. It's not what I think, it's what people need. And then we measure the outcome of that on the other side. We're very focused on, it's not the intent of what we seek out to do, it's the impact. I can feel good about doing a strategy. I can give out 20 bologna sandwiches up and down, Hartford's busiest street. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't equal a systemic improvement, then what is it worth? So we challenge ourselves to do the work and to measure the outcome on the other side to make sure that people are really better off by the effort that we put forth.
Interesting. And so the do you have any resistance to the work that you do? Do you find any of that?
Sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful.
No, maybe I'm naive, but I'm
No. Sometimes it's difficult because systems operate how they have.
Right.
And even well-intended people, hard-working people, sometimes feel challenged by a new and different goal that's not compliance, right? It's ambitious. It's higher.
We're habit-seeking mammals, right? So we don't like necessarily change, right? We like habits as mammals, right? We seek out for protection. It's wired into us. So
Yes. So sometimes it's difficult to get partners on board around what this change looks like and the effort that it takes to do it.
So that kind of resistance, more like that's institutional, I'm saying, but like in terms of, I don't know, somebody's political, maybe too strong of a word, but like their philosophical resistance. Like not because, we don't want change because we may be, we agree with all this stuff, but this is how we do it and leave us alone. That's one type of resistance. More like, this isn't our philosophical or political goal.
Yeah.
You get that?
Yes, I do get that. So I'll give you an example of something that we're working on right now that might illuminate some of the natural tension that happens in our work. We've been working really closely with some policymakers around universal school meals in Stamford.
Okay.
Students in Stamford have benefited from free breakfast and lunch since the return of school after COVID. So the last 4 school years, students have not had to navigate any payment for food. And we did that through federal government, state government money. Those allotments are now up. So that cost would have to go to individual municipalities. It's at the cost of about $1 million out of a $346 million budget. We are very passionate about the fact that this is a valuable cost for the school district that equals about $60 per kid for the school year. If that fee goes to individual families, it turns out to be $120 per month per kid. Yeah. At the time that groceries are so much. So we're pushing on that for the school district to do it. We're pushing at the state level for that to happen on both of those rungs of intervention. Some of the resistance that we've had, there's been board members who have said, well, if people qualify for free lunch, they'll still get it. So why are you arguing for this other 40% of people who could presumably still afford it? Why is that your deal? Why is that your business? But we understand that food is more important as it relates to the functioning of a child in school being ready to learn. And we also realize that food is the only thing we put an economic litmus test on in schools. We don't do that for Chromebooks. We don't do that for textbooks. We don't do that for pens or paper. When you come to school, you have access to this. But for food, it's different. And we don't think it should be. We think it's so important of the social functioning of school, the inherent basic needs of children, and the opportunity to be an equalizer. That's an example of some of the systemic, institutional, and individual pushback we get sometimes.
Do you do lobbying? Like, do you have a lobbying arm, or is it just you guys show up there and be like, "Hey, I want to talk to you"? Like, how does it work?
Well, we are the lobbying arm.
Yeah. Well, which is the best because you're not hiring like a person in a suit that and that could be effective too. But you go there and look, I'm on the ground. Here's what I see. This is important. Yeah. Could I talk to you for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And I think that's, and sorry, Melanie, I want to give you the opportunity, but I think that's really a unique capability that we possess, that we show up and we give lived experience to the people who have to make the decisions. It's not a fancy lobbyist that come and spits statistics, and we use data.
Sure.
We drive with that, but it's really around, no, my kid experienced this yesterday in school, and I need you, decision maker, to understand how this affects our family. And we found that that has been so much more valuable as far as people understanding the context of the issues and what it means. Melanie, I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah. So what do you, in terms of, have you had to, have you interfaced with local legislators and even statewide legislators about these kinds of things?
Well, we have conversations with them in the past, and we keep having it because this is a very big issue, especially now that we having this climate on immigration issues too. The families already, they don't really want to give out information because of the immigration status and everything that they have in their plate right now. And next year, if we don't have free school meals in the schools, that means that in order for those kids to qualify, they need to fill out an application, sharing information about their income and about their families and about names of the parents that might have been not legal in somehow situation. And that's going to be, by the end, they're affected. The kids are going to be affected, because what if you have a kid in school that they're hungry? A lot of the families, they're not allowed to bring a plate of food, the 3 meals a day. And a lot of those kids, they go to school looking for the food that they're going to serve in the school on a daily basis, for breakfast, for lunch.
To the people that resist this stuff, have you ever, like, you know, and I sort of, as I get older, I sort of get more drawn to wanting to help with this kind of stuff. As a person who advocates for a living, I'm a divorce attorney, right? I go to court and I advocate for people. And I just want to sort of grab them sometimes and say, what kind of country, what do you think we're going to put out as a country when you're not going to give people the resources they need? What is our country going to look like? Is it going to be just jails? Is it going to be people that are all broke that have to steal from people to survive? What does it look like to you when you have the people that have and they continue to grow and amass wealth, and you have people that are left behind? What is the country going to look like? How do you think we're going to compete against China? How do you think we're going to compete in terms of a world economy? How are we going to get people to, you know, get involved in the tech sector and all those things that are growing? If we can't even feed them, do they think about, like, what kind of society we want to live in? What do they think? They're just going to go back to a $2 million house and not have to deal with this? Who's going to work for them and their businesses? Who's going to protect them? Who's going to do the work? I just very frustrating to me, because to me it seems so simple, right? Like, how do I want to live in a nice community where people can pay for their goods and services and have a basic level of, I mean, we're here for what, 75 years, and that's it. You're gone. It must be very frustrating for you both to see this sometimes when you're sitting with people and you're like,
really?
I'm not looking to go buy candy, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to help people survive, and hopefully more than survive, right? Because just surviving is not going to get us anywhere, right? You have to thrive.
Yeah.
You can't be in survival mode, because we know, the studies show, that when you're just always trying to survive, that has a negative correlation to bad outcomes as an adult, right? Kids get into all kinds of trouble. They develop mental illness. They turn to self-harm sometimes. It's just, I don't know what the people that resist this kind of stuff think, what kind of society they think they're going to produce by not funding these important
food. Like,
I mean,
we shouldn't
what
even
the
have that
F?
conversation.
What the F?
Right.
We can't feed you. Okay, so fine. We're not going to feed these kids. So when this kid turns 18 and needs to go off to the workforce, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
What are they going to do? They're going to, you know, what's that going to look like? They're going to turn to crime. They're going to, so we just build more jail? Like, no, like we have to fix this. As we sort of wind down here, what's new? What's anything new that's on the horizon that's coming out that you're going to roll out? Anything new you're getting into? Obviously, you have your hands full with the stuff that you've had for so many years, but anything new that you're looking at and looking to roll out in the next few months?
So we're working really intently on a project called the Child Care Incubator Feasibility Study here in Stamford. There are several models throughout the state. The most developed is in New Britain. And it's a model that is twofold. It's a workforce development model for entrepreneurs who'd like to open family or group daycares, while simultaneously offering more affordable, high-quality child care spots within our town. So we're looking to work very closely with organizations like All Our Kin and Cora's Kids that do development for people pursuing licensure at the state level to run these types of
They want to open a home
facilities.
daycare.
They do. They do. And we're looking to find a physical brick and mortar space to simulate this home daycare so folks can do this under
And then you can make
support.
and the person who does this, they may be a good provider. They can do this. They can make a living too.
Economic mobility.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, right. And that, you can, and those are skills that you can obtain relatively, without 4 years of school. I mean,
Right.
you could be a mom or a dad and know how to nurture a child and, and then change diapers. And those are sort of almost primal instinct, right? You don't need a ton of training for that. And you can make a decent living if you're good with kids, if you have the patience to deal with the kids. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you're getting folks to say, hey, look, you want, instead of staying home, you can stay home and take care of 2 more kids and make a few bucks, but also offer affordable childcare to people in the community.
Right. And a real sustainable business model around what it looks like to run your own daycare, have that level of business acumen.
Yeah.
In the coursework is embedded financial literacy and all the things.
Payroll and
education
insurance.
over.
And then you get, of course, you're licensed by the Department of,
Yep.
I forgot who does it at the state. Is it the
Consumer
Consumer Protection?
Or
Department of
Early
Education.
Childhood.
Office of Child, right. So they have to
OEC.
come and inspect
Yes.
and all of those things because it has to be safe. You got to learn about being a mandated reporter,
All of those
all that
things.
stuff, right? But you can train people with that
Yes.
stuff,
That's
right?
the idea.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And when is that starting now or?
We're doing the feasibility study now. I just had an opportunity to look at a space yesterday with a community partner, so hoping that works out. We're hoping to launch this fall and offer a 2-semester module for preparation, and then offer childcare seats in the spring or summer of 2026.
And is it only open to folks in Stamford?
Well, this is what this childcare incubator will be, but there are others in other.
So New Britain has a successful model?
They do right now. They have.
Is that the most successful in the state, you
They
think?
do.
Yes.
It's the most developed. They have 4
Wow.
classrooms up and running
Wow.
in collaboration with their local housing authority. It's a really exciting model.
Wow. And so what a cool concept that you can, one, right, help people be, and it's not, and this isn't like one of the, there's all these commercial models, these, for-profit entities that do it themselves, like Kinder Care and all that stuff. But this is mom and pop, right? Like out of their home. And wow, and they can learn so much. And do you have speakers come in to like help them with like accountants and
Yeah, it hasn't started yet,
bookkeepers,
but
that's
yes.
sort of the model?
Yes, we're going to partner with experts in the field, people already in the business, to share, models around how to get Care for Kids stipends.
Oh, right, Care
from
for
the
Kids
states.
stipends, right. Yeah, that's an
all
important
of these technical type of things that people kind of learn on the ground. We want to have them ready for that. The other thing that's exciting, Rich, is that we look to, even after their license, to run a continuous professional development cohort.
Right.
So once licensed, they are still in network, still in relationship, and learning and growing.
Wow. So by spring, you think spring of 26, they'll take their first children in.
Yes.
Wow.
That's the hope.
What a system. That's so great because that's not just handing out money. You're the old adage, right? You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach a man a fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
And then they go.
I mean, there you go. But what I love about this is that you're not just feeding the daycare provider for a lifetime. They can take care of their family, make some money, but it's also helping the community because presumably it's going to offer it at a better rate than, let's say, one of the commercial places that's $4.50 a week for an infant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a system. So as we wind down here, how do we, if folks want to, obviously the folks in Stamford want to get in touch with you, but if people want to give an individual donation or they want to get involved in some way and volunteer and learn more about your program, What's your website? Tell us how they can learn more.
Thank you, Rich. We can be found at www.stanfordcradletocareer.org.
Okay.
We have an opportunity to have a donation button there.
Okay.
And to your other point, really our power is partnership. So folks who'd like to be volunteers in our Community Action Network, be a part of our thinking tanks around solutions and strategies, we welcome all level of input and support.
Right. And are you on other social media as well?
We are.
Facebook, Instagram,
We have pages
TikTok.
on.
You got to be everywhere now,
We
right?
are. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Right.
So Stanford Cradle to Career is the tag on all of those. So welcome partnership throughout.
People can follow you there. And
yes. And Rich, I'd also I mentioned that there were 5 other organizations like mine in the state. They sit in Norwalk, Bridgeport, Danbury, and Waterbury.
Okay.
In addition to Stamford, all a part of the Strive Together network. And we've launched something called the Connecticut Cradle to Career Coalition, which allows us to have a unified structure when we do lobby. From time to time, we do testimony at the state. We are able to author other letters and opinions to our legislators in order to give them that real lived experience when they get before the table to make a very important vote about how that lands on the children and students of Stamford and Connecticut as a whole.
Well, this is great. This is noble work. This is important work. I hope you're able to navigate this political climate and keep providing these things to folks. And thank you for coming here. And again, back to the name of my podcast is I'll Call My Guy. And the concept there is, it's sort of the old thing like, hey, Rich, I have a leaky pipe. I'll call my guy, right? But here it's like, well, I need, I have a family that's needs resources, and so now I have some other guys, gals that when I have somebody that is in need of resources, you guys seem like some of the most resourceful people I've ever met. So thank you for providing that to the community and making our state a better place to live.
Thank you for having us.
Sure, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.